Good morning, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of Favorite Album of the Year. Today we have moved on to 1988. The 80s are closing down fast here. Fast and Furious. We'll be in the 90s by the end of the week. Can you dig it? Anyway, another pretty strong year for popular music, right? And, you know, for me as a 22-year-old metalhead back in 88, still a lot of good stuff to love, right? Some tough choices. I think for me, my number one, it wasn't really too hard of a pick. It seems like throughout much of the 80s, my hardest choices were always that runner-up, because there's a lot of good choices, right? A lot of good guys, a lot of good albums falling into the 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 hole. Got to kind of figure out which one of those is the runner-up, which is the almost was, right? But my number one, pretty damn good album. Pretty legendary album. Perhaps one of the greatest concept albums of all time. All right, specifically in the genre of kind of progressive metal. Okay, which wasn't so much a thrown about term back in 1988. Certainly is now. Certainly was in the 90s, and I think this album and this band had a lot to do with that. Released May 3rd, 1988, produced by Peter Collins. I'm talking about Operation Mindcrime by Queensryche. Big into this when it came out. So this came out in my final semester of my senior year. In fact, this came out just before graduation in college. And I remember this was kind of like the soundtrack to that entire summer. All right, graduated from college, woohoo, right? And Operation Mindcrime. I believe I had did I have the LP or the cassette? I don't remember because I was buying both LPs and cassettes at the time, so I don't remember exactly what I was doing or which one I had. Might have had both. Don't know. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. A great album. Probably the greatest Queensryche album of all. You could say, their first 4 releases, the EP, Warning, Rage for Order, Operation Mindcrime, definitely their crowning achievements. For me, Empire was a little bit of a step back, although still very good. And then, for many, many years, the decline in quality would continue on. I think they've kind of redeemed themselves with the more recent lineup in the last couple of years. But back to Operation Mindcrime, fantastic concept album. It kind of sweeps you away from beginning to end. Great songwriting, great melodies, fantastic playing. Jeff Tate in absolutely fine form here. Wilton and DeGarmo and the whole band just kind of knocking it out of the park. You got a lot of anthems on here. A lot of times when you have concept albums, sometimes you can pull out a couple tracks, but usually it's an album taken as a whole. But I think here there are some standout tracks here. Of course, finishing off the whole album, you got Eyes of a Stranger, and kicking it off, you got I Remember Now. Great way to bookend the album. A lot of other, Anarchy X, Revolution Calling, another fist-pumping metal anthem right there. The title track is great. Speak, Spreading the Disease, The Mission, Sweet Sister Mary, The Needle Lies, Electric Requiem, Breaking the Silence, I Don't Believe in Love, another memorable standalone track on this album. Oh, what else? Waiting for 22, My Empty Room, and like I already mentioned, Eyes of a Stranger finishing it all off. Top to bottom, incredible music. Flows so well. Whereas, some concept albums in rock history might tend to get a little bloated at times, maybe a little overlong, whatever. I think this is perfect length, tells the story, knocks it out of the park. Easily one of the best ever. Okay, so that's my number one. Was not really a question for me, but the runner-up, yeah, that was. So, had a couple that I was tossing around, like I said earlier. And all of them still are pretty special to me. I almost went a different direction here on my number 2 because, again, remember, I always take a look at what would have been my pick back then, either that year or a year or two after, and then how do I feel about these same albums now in the 20, 30 years since these things have come out? How much do I listen to them now? How much do I still cherish them now? I almost picked a different runner-up. And I'm going to tell you in a minute what my number 3 was, and it's really special to me. But I have to go with this album because, again, I was so into this band at the time. And I think, despite some people kind of ride on this album for the production a little bit, I think the songs are massive. It's so heavy and epic. And I saw them a couple times on this tour, and I remember just being absolutely blown away. I'm talking about And Justice for All by Metallica. It's just such a huge album. Really long songs, heavy. It's kind of progressive in spots. The drums don't sound great. Yeah, you can barely hear Jason Newsted's bass. But man, I tell you, the guitars are just beefy. They're thick, they're crunchy, and it's just one epic riff after another on this album. Blackened and Justice for All. Maybe this isn't as much of a pure thrash album as the couple before it, but I think here there's elements of kind of doom on here. There's certainly thrash because you got Dyer's Eve and Blackened. Justice for All's got its moments. Great song. Eye of the Beholder 1. Great song. Fantastic video. Shortest Straw. Dun, 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 dun. Harvester of Sorrow. I love Harvester of Sorrow. That's kind of doomy and grinding. The Frayed Ends of Sanity. That one's more of a thrash tune, right? To Live Is to Die. Fantastic, great musical passages in that song. I don't know. I just think it's a really, really good song. Like I said, if it wasn't for the absolute splendor of Operation Mindcrime, this is probably my number one. But gotta go with Operation Mindcrime. And again, these two are beating out some really good ones here. So, Seventh Son of a Seventh Son by Iron Maiden. My actual number 3 was Yngwie Malmsteen's Odyssey, the great album he did with Joe Lynn Turner. I love that album. I love it. Probably love it more now than I did back then, and I loved it back then. Megadeth's So Far So Good, So What? Toto's the 7th one, right? Testament, New World Order, or the New Order, sorry. New World Order. South of Heaven by Slayer, which I didn't appreciate as much back then because I thought that was a big letdown after after Rain and Blood. But I've come to really dig that album for what it is. Imaginos by Blue Oyster Cult, right? And how about Fate's Warning, No Exit? Great album. First album with Ray Alder. I really looked at that one. I was like, love that album. But, top 2 here. There you have them. Great ones, indeed. I'm sure lots of folks are going to come up with all sorts of other picks. Remember, there is no right or wrong answer here. It's whatever is your favorite. Your favorite. The one you feel in your gut and your heart and your mind, that's the one you should go with. Is always your heart, your gut is going to tell you, that's the one. That's the one you should pick. It's not based on which is better from a production standpoint or musicianship standpoint, or which one sold more records, or which one charted higher. It's got nothing to do with that. It's which one you like the best, right? So list that in the comments below, and make sure you visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, of course, we're here on YouTube all the damn time. Coming up, we recorded a couple rant videos last night with the Cyber Brothers. They'll be posting sometime today, and tomorrow morning, 1989, as we close out the 80s, and then tomorrow night, don't miss it, one-on-one with Andy Powell from Wishbone Ash. Really looking forward to that conversation. So that's coming up tomorrow, and then all sorts of stuff happening this weekend. Got Martin Popoff coming on the show early next week. He's going to talk about his new Iron Maiden book that just published. You don't want to miss that either. So stay tuned. Lots of great stuff. Have a good one. Bye-bye.